three types of financial statement cycles and related internal control, that is sales and collection cycle, purchases and payment cycles, and payroll and personnel cycles. This is key control activities. Adequate separations of duties, important to prevent various types of international and international type of misstatements. Proper authorization. Credit must be properly authorized before a sale takes place. Goods should be shipped only after proper authorization. Price, including basic term, freight, and discount must be authorized. Why we need proper authorization? To prevent the loss of company assets by shipping to fictitious customers or those who fail to pay for the goods, and to ensure that the sale is billed at the price set by company policy. Adequate documents and records. Prepare multiple pre-number sales invoice at the time a customer order is received. Copies are used for different purposes. That is, approved credit, authorized shipment, record the number of units shipped, and bill customers. Pre-numbered document usage to prevent the failure to bill or record sales, to prevent the occurrence of duplicate billings and recordings. Assistant. Assistant examines sales invoice for supporting bills of lading, completeness, account for numerical sequence of shipping documents, accuracy, compare sales order to provide approved price list. Classification. Examine whether expense account number are verified. Timing. See completeness. Posting. Examine reconciliations of deposits to check listings. Audit of purchase and payment cycle. Key control activities: authorization of purchases, separations of asset custody from other functions, timely recording, independent review of transaction, and authorizations of payment. Authorization of purchases. Purpose: to ensure that the goods and services purchased are for authorized company purposes, to avoid the purchase of excessive or unnecessary items. Internal control issues. After the purchase requisitions have been approved, a purchase order to purchase the goods must be initiated. Purchase order issue should be pre-numbered and should include sufficient column and space to minimize the likelihood of unintentional omission on the form when goods are ordered. Separations of asset custody from other functions. Separation the receiving department, storeroom, unit, and accounting function to prevent theft or misuse of goods. Timely recording. Method of recording: upon the receipt of goods and services or upon the vendor's invoice is received. Proper recording involves verifying goods received against relevant documents. Independent review of transaction. Independent party check on information recorded in the system is required to ensure proper procedure of record keeping. Authorizations of payment. 1. Establish list of approval authority. Different ranking of personnel responsible to approve different amount of payment. Separations of responsibilities between those recording the transaction, preparer of the check, approval of the payment. 3. Proper documentation. Check should be in sequence of number, printed on special paper that make it difficult to alter the payee or amount. Establish a special physical control over blank, voided, and signed check. Audit of account payables. Using test of details of balance, that is, details tie-in, assistance, completeness, accuracy, classification, cut-off, obligations, and presentations and disclosure. Detail tie-in to determine account payable in the account payable list. Agree with related master file, the total is correctly added, and agrees with the general ledger. Assistant to determine the account payable is the account payable list exists. Completeness to determine the existing of account payable are included in the account payable list. Cut-off to determine the transaction in the acquisitions and payment cycle are recorded in the proper period. Obligations to determine the company has an obligations to pay the liabilities included in account payables. Accuracy to determine account payable in the account payable list are accurate. Classification to determine account payable in the account payable list are properly classified. Presentations and disclosure to determine the accounts in the acquisitions and payment cycle are properly presented and disclosed. This is audit of payroll and personnel cycles. Difference between this cycle and the other cycles: there is only one class of transactions of payroll. Second, transactions are far more significant than related balance sheet account. Third, internal control over payroll are effective for almost all companies. Key control activities, that is adequate separations of duties, proper authorization, adequate documents and records, physical control over assets and records, independent check on performance, preparations of payroll tax forms, payment of the payroll tax while withheld and other withholding on a timely basis. Adequate separations of duties. Purpose is to prevent overpayments and payments to non-existent employees. Therefore, human resource department should be independent on the payroll function. Purpose of proper authorization is to ensure that the payroll payments are for authorized purpose. Adequate documents and record is to ensure adequate number of documents and record represent the transaction. Physical control over assets and records is to ensure payroll checks are being used for authorized transactions only. Independent check on performance is to ensure payroll transactions are monitored accordingly by responsible person. Preparations of payroll tax forms. Purpose is to prevent a potential liability for unpaid taxes, penalty and interest if the client fails to prepare the tax form properly. Payment of the payroll tax withheld and other withholdings on a timely basis is to ensure the payments of the payroll tax withheld and other withholding on a timely basis. Classes of transaction: cash receipt, account, bank and account receivable, business function, recording cash receipt, document and record, cash receipt transaction and cash receipt journal. Classes of transaction for sales returns and allowance, account sales returns and allowance, account receivable, business function, processing and recording sales return and allowance, document and records, credit memo and sales returns and allowance journal. Classes of transaction: charge off of uncollectible account, account receivable and allowance for uncollectible account, business function, charging off uncollectible account receivable, document and record, uncollectible account authorization and general journal. Classes of transaction: bad debt expenses, account, bad debt expenses and allowance for uncollectible account, business function, providing for bad debt, documents and records, general journal. Classes of transaction: purchases, account, inventory, account payable, PPE, prepaid expenses, leasehold and selling expenses. Business function: processing purchase order, receiving goods and services, and recognizing the liability. Document and record: purchasing requisitions and order, receiving order, acquisitions, transaction files and journal or listing, vendor's invoice, debit memo, voucher, account payable master file, account payable trial balance. Classes of transaction: cash disbursements or payment, account, cash in bank, account payable, purchase discount. Business function: processing and recording cash disbursements, document and record, check, cash disbursement, transaction file journal, or listing. Classes of transaction: payroll, account, payroll cash, payroll expenses account. Business function: personal and employment, document and record, personal records, deductive account authorization form, and rate authorization form. Classes of transaction: payroll, account, payroll withholding account, payroll accrual account. Business function: timekeeping and payroll preparation, document and record, time card, job time card, payroll transaction listing, payroll journal listing, and payroll master file. Classes of transaction: payroll, account, payroll withholding account, payroll accrual account. Business function: payroll of payment of payroll, document and record, payroll check, payroll bank account reconciliation. Classes of transaction: payroll, account, payroll withholding account, payroll accrual account. Business function: preparations of payroll tax return and payment of taxes, document and record, payroll tax return.